Rain lashed against the roof of Westbridge General Hospital like a whip, testing the building's resilience. It was past midnight, and the emergency room had turned into complete chaos. Nurses were rushing around, doctors were shouting, and patients' relatives were screaming to make their voices heard. Sandra Mitchell, a 26-year-old nurse, was nearing the end of her double shift. She had been on her feet for 16 hours. Every muscle, every fiber of her body was rebelling against her, but still, she continued. Because she loved her job, because there were people who needed help, and this was her duty. She checked the IV drips, measured blood pressure, gave smiles to patients' relatives. There was still compassion in her tired eyes. She could barely feel her feet, and keeping her eyes open required a struggle each time. But still she prepared herself for the next patient in line. She glanced around. There were new arrivals. Patients were being examined with quick steps. Dr. Sanders had traces of worry on his face for a moment. He called her name in the corridor. "Sandra, check the entrance. There's a possible cardiac case. Go see what's going on." Sandra walked quickly down the corridor. In the crowd she saw a man crouched by a wall, completely soaked from the rain. Dirty clothes, thin, torn garments. He was clutching his chest. There were signs of pain on his face. He appeared middle-aged. His hair looked wet and matted. Water dripped from his t-shirt onto the floor. Sandra's nurse colleague Janet stood beside him, raising her eyebrows. "Another one from the streets," she muttered. "Probably just faking complaints to warm up. I know these types." She rolled her eyes. There was a chilling smile on her face. Janet's voice had risen slightly, as if she wanted everyone around to hear. Her eyes shifted to Sandra. For a moment she saw that compassionate expression on Sandra's face, and something stirred inside her. A discomfort, a jealousy. Sandra was always like this. Always perfect. Always understanding. Always everyone's favorite. Sandra stopped abruptly. Her voice was sharp as a knife. "He's a patient," she said. "Nothing else. I'll handle this." Janet's face tensed. She pursed her lips. "Of course you'll handle it," she murmured, but loud enough for Sandra to hear. "You always know everything better anyway." Without answering, Sandra moved forward quickly. Janet watched her from behind. Something gleamed in her eyes. Was it anger? Was it envy? Was it both? As she watched Sandra's confident steps, that familiar feeling swelled inside her again. Why did everyone love Sandra so much? Why did every patient want to talk to her? Janet worked too. Janet was tired too. But no one saw her. As she approached, the man's condition became clearer. His lips were bluish. His eyes seemed to close with pain. Sandra crouched beside him. She checked the IV drips. Sandra held the patient's hand, doing so purely from humanity. "Can you breathe? Do you have pain anywhere besides your chest?" she asked in a calm but professional voice. The man tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. He just seemed to groan. Sandra didn't give up and continued to attend to him. Okay. Let's get you inside and settled." She pulled over a wheelchair, sat him down. As a nurse, she had quick movements, but as a human being, she also had gentleness. She found a dry towel, tried to dry his wet hair, tried to reduce the cold and wetness on him. She closed the examination room door. Sandra carefully, slowly said, "My name is Sandra Mitchell," she said in a soft but clear voice. "I work here as a nurse, and I'll be taking care of you." The man took a shaky breath. He was experiencing gratitude and shame simultaneously. He wasn't used to receiving unconditional compassion from a person, especially not this kind of compassion. "Thank you," he rasped, his voice barely coming out. "Don't talk too much," Sandra said. "Just rest." In the background, the noisy hospital life continued, but the only thing Sandra focused on was this man. She took out her stethoscope, placed her hand on his chest, irregular, accelerated beats, but there was no serious danger sign at first glance. She checked his pulse, fast, too fast, checked his body temperature. The findings indicated dehydration and low blood sugar. Dr. Sanders and Nurse Janet looked at each other, but Sandra ignored them. Her attention was completely focused on her patient. Janet was waiting in the corridor, arms crossed, tapping her foot on the ground. As Dr. Sanders passed by, she said in a low voice, "Sandra's playing hero again," as if only she can show compassion. Dr. Sanders shrugged and walked away, but the fire inside Janet hadn't been extinguished. She looked at the door Sandra had closed with those eyes. A plan was forming in her head, slowly. insidiously. Inside, alone. As Sandra talked with the man, she noticed something strange about him. His hands. They weren't rough. The hands of someone living on the streets wouldn't be like this. They were worked, well-maintained hands, manicured, orderly. She seemed to notice there was a contradiction. But the hospital was a complete battlefield, and Sandra had no time to think. Dr. Sanders opened the door. "Sandra, leave him. We'll deal with it later. We're too busy right now," he said. Sandra nodded but continued to stand. As the night progressed, Sandra came back to check every few minutes, measured blood pressure, gave oxygen, kept encouraging the man to talk, but only short sentences. She had attended to him enough and rushed to a new patient and returned. She never stopped checking on this man. She just couldn't leave him. Janet followed with her eyes at every pass, sitting at the registration desk, pretending to look at papers, but actually watching Sandra, every movement, every smile, every compassionate look, and the hatred inside her grew, grew, grew. "Why?" she murmured to herself. "Why is she always like this?" During a break in the cafeteria, Janet sat with other nurses. Sandra's name came up. Alicia said, "Sandra really took care of that homeless man today. She's really kind-hearted." Janet slammed her cup on the table. "Kind-hearted," she said, her voice slightly sharp. "Or is it for attention? Maybe she wants everyone to see her. Maybe she's just showing off." The silence at the table was heavy. Alicia raised her eyebrows. "Janet, that's too—" "Too what?" Janet snapped. "True?" "Yes, true. We all do the same job, but only Sandra is seen. Only Sandra is praised." She walked away from the table, but the poison inside her continued to spread. Late at night, knowing the man needed to eat, Sandra found something from the vending machine, a pack of cookies and fruit juice, but she bought this with money, from her own wallet, from the last crumpled dollar bills she had. Janet was watching from the corner. She saw everything. Sandra taking money from her wallet, taking the cookies, taking them to that homeless man. And something inside her broke. But at the same time, an idea was born, a dark idea. The man opened his eyes, weak, but a bit calmer. Cookies on the counter, fruit juice beside them. "You need to eat," Sandra said. "Your sugar level is very low." The man slowly ate the cookies, hesitantly but ate. Drank the fruit juice and didn't take his eyes off Sandra's face. Astonishment, but also recognition. As if the man understood what it meant for Sandra to see him. This transparency, this compassion. Would everyone do this? What would most people do, and why would they do it? "Not everyone would do this," he whispered. Sandra smiled. Despite the exhaustion of caring for patients, it was sincere. "Everyone deserves compassion," she said. After the words came out, Sandra withdrew, adjusted his pillow, quietly. When morning light came, the ER had slowed down. Shift change, new patients arriving. Sandra's eyes were burning, but she had to go further. She continued working. For a moment she returned to check on that man. The bed was empty. Sandra's heart stopped for a moment. Her chest collapsed inward. The bed was clean. The patient's clothes were neatly folded. But that man had disappeared. Sandra searched along the corridor, through doors, from the bathroom. She couldn't find any trace. Janet was seething, smiling, a slight small smile. "I told you," she said, her voice resembling triumph. "They never stay. They just want a bed and warmth. Don't you see how hard our job is? But you defended him. Where was every patient important?" Sandra seemed not to hear at all. She just felt emptiness. That man's hand, that man's voice, that thank you. It was etched in her mind, but Janet wasn't satisfied, not satisfied at all. If you like this story, please don't forget to like it. Share your thoughts with your comments. Because without your support, we can't continue telling these kinds of deep and emotional stories. Subscribe, turn on notifications. Because this story isn't over yet, there's more to come. And believe me, what you'll see will surprise you very much. Weeks passed. Months passed. Sandra scanned the emergency room with one eye during every shift. Maybe that man would come back. Maybe he wouldn't. But her heart trembled with curiosity. Her mother, Linda, was battling a neurological disease. The illness was slowly but mercilessly paralyzing her body. Medical care was very expensive. Insurance coverage was very limited. Month after month, Sandra's salary went to medication and doctor bills. She couldn't quit her job, but the money she earned each month was never enough. Janet knew everything, because Janet listened, in hospital corridors, in the cafeteria, in the locker room. When Sandra talked about her mother, Janet perked up. When Sandra complained about bills, Janet took notes, mental notes, dark notes. Poor Sandra, she thought one day. Life must be so hard for you. But her voice wasn't compassionate. It was mocking, poisonous. And then the opportunity came. 3 weeks later, events accelerated. Sandra made a mistake in a patient file, a small error, in name spelling, normally insignificant, but Janet saw that mistake, and Janet quietly took the registration book, erased Sandra's writing, wrote another name, to make it look like a more serious error, then forwarded the file to the quality control department. An anonymous tip, she said on the phone. Sandra Mitchell has serious errors in patient records, should be checked. She hung up the phone, smiled, a dark, cold smile. Sandra was called from Human Resources 3 days later. A serious error had been detected in a patient file. Sandra was shocked. "I didn't make such an error," she said. "I checked." Everything was correct, but the records said otherwise. The records had been changed, and Sandra's voice wasn't heard. The decision was firm. Official warning. Temporary. Salary reduction. In the cafeteria, Sandra sat holding the Human Resources letter in her hand, crying silently. This reduction meant Linda's new experimental treatment couldn't be obtained this month. She would have to make a choice. Which treatment could be skipped? Tears fell drop by drop onto the paper. Janet passed by the other side of the table. She stopped. Looked. Something flashed in her eyes. Triumph? Happiness? "Sandra, what happened?" she asked, her voice filled with fake concern. Sandra raised her head, tears on her cheeks. "I got a salary reduction," she whispered. "I made a mistake. But I don't remember. I swear I didn't do it." Janet sat down, placed her hand on Sandra's shoulder, but her hand was cold, lifeless. "I'm sorry," she said. "Sometimes mistakes happen. Maybe you're too tired. Maybe your attention was scattered. Maybe because of that homeless man." Sandra froze. Her eyes shifted to Janet. "What do you mean?" Janet shrugged. "Nothing. Just, you were very busy with him that night. Maybe other things were neglected. Just thinking." She stood up, left. But seeds of doubt had been planted inside Sandra. A suspicion, a pain. Her nurse friend Alicia compassionately held her shoulder. "I'm sorry, Sandra. They're being too harsh." But Sandra couldn't say anything. That day, as she was leaving her shift, the phone rang. Ryan Chambers, her ex-boyfriend, surgeon, son of a wealthy family. "We need to talk," he said in a strange tone. "Come to the back of the hospital. 10 minutes. Sandra didn't want to go, but she went. Ryan was waiting by his luxury car. There was sympathy and a bit of arrogance on his face. He wore an expensive chiffon suit, showing off. "I heard about the salary cut," he said. "It can be tough here. Especially for someone talented like you. Come on." He pointed to his car. There was a bit of mockery under the symbol. "My family has connections. My father is on the hospital board. I can open doors for your mother, better facilities, better doctors, VIP care." Sandra was silent. "Will you come back to me, Sandra?" Ryan said. "We were good together. Plus, my dad's on the hospital board. I can do a lot for you." "I can't be bought," Sandra said. Her voice was cold. Ryan smiled, but it was a petulant smile. He took a step forward. "Your salary is limited. You won't be able to care for your mother. Look, you're in terrible financial shape. Who's going to save you? Maybe that homeless man, the one who disappeared from your ER." The word stabbed her heart, because he was right, perhaps painfully right. Fury ignited in Sandra's heart. "Don't mix up issues with my life," she snapped. That night when she returned home, her mother asked worried questions. Sandra sat silently looking at the bills piled on the table. There was a hopelessness she didn't feel, a terrible, incomprehensible situation. But still she continued. Work had become her entire life. She took extra shifts, 2, sometimes 3 a week. She had almost nothing to sustain her own life. She ate instant noodles, carried her coffee with her, didn't sleep. Because every hour mattered, Every hour meant a patient. Every hour meant a choice. Janet watched her every shift. She saw Sandra's exhaustion. She saw Sandra's pain. And she felt satisfaction inside. Dark, sick satisfaction. Maybe now everyone will see that you're not so perfect after all, she thought. Maybe now I'll be seen too. But life had made other plans. An exhausting week passed. Sandra was living with insomnia. One morning Sandra woke up after 3 hours of sleep. It was late when she returned from her shift. She walked to the door, got the mail, an envelope, printed writing. Address written, no return address. Name, Sandra Mitchell. She opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a check, a strange check, $50,000. There was a note, simple, written. 3 words, for your mother's care. Thank you for compassion. A friend. Sandra's chest couldn't breathe. The check almost fell from her hand. She called the bank. The representative on the line verified the check. It was real, valid, $50,000, more than a year's salary. Who was this? Could it be Ryan? No, Ryan was impossible. The hospital? No, illogical. The government? No, it made no sense. Sandra clearly thought of that man. That homeless man. David. Because she could never forget David. Those eyes, that voice, that compassion, that open wound. But was David homeless? How could he send $50,000? She just felt it and knew. Because Sandra's heart knew. Somehow she knew this way. The news spread in the hospital, quickly, very quickly. An anonymous donation had been made to Sandra. Janet overheard. In the corridor, in the nurse's room, and the anger inside her exploded. How? She thought. How is she always so lucky? Always rescued. Her nurse friend Marie came up to her. Did you hear? Someone sent Sandra money for her mother's treatment. Isn't that sweet? Janet turned her face. Yes, she said coldly. Very sweet. Very lucky. Very perfect, Sandra. Always. Marie raised her eyebrows. Janet, you... I'm fine. Janet cut her off. Just tired. We're all tired. But Janet wasn't fine. Not fine at all. A week later, the hospital directorate sent an official invitation, annual charity gala, at Westbridge Grand Hotel. The ticket was expensive, but an anonymous sponsor was covering Sandra's entry. Even more surprising, clothing and everything was provided. Even makeup for permission and good appearance. Sandra both didn't want to go and wanted to go. There was something inside her. Maybe she would find answers. Maybe she would see David. Maybe this was all connected. When Janet learned about the invitation, she went crazy. In the nurse's room alone, she slammed her fist on the table. She's given everything, she screamed to no one. Everything. Donation, invitation, dress. What am I working here for? Am I nothing? Tears poured out, but these tears weren't sadness. It was anger, envy, pure, merciless envy. She decided to go to the gala. She wasn't invited, but she didn't care. She found a ticket, bargained, borrowed money. She would go. She would watch Sandra, and maybe she would find her chance. The night came. Sandra wore a navy blue dress borrowed from her nurse friend Alicia. Luxury hotel. Crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. Flower arrangements in corridors. Orchestra music. Inside, the hall sparkled. Standing at the door, Sandra was shocked. Such perfection was something that didn't suit her. But what do I do? She said to herself. The hall was packed. Dr. Sanders was chatting with the CFO. Ryan stood by a marble column, scanning the crowd. When he saw her, his eyebrows would rise. Sandra quickly turned her head. She didn't want to talk to him. Never. Janet stood in the corner. She wore a cheap dress but looked clean. Her makeup was a bit excessive. Her hair was stiff. But her eyes followed Sandra. Every step, every smile, every breath. Look at her, she murmured, like a princess, as if it belongs to her. The director took the podium. Welcome, he said in greeting. Tonight we have a special guest, a philanthropist who made a significant donation. Before announcing the name, dressed in formal attire, a man came onto the stage, tall, broad-shouldered, black tuxedo, hair completely orderly, no blemish, confident gaze, but the eyes. Sandra's heart stopped. Completely stopped. Janet's mouth fell open. "Who is this?" she whispered. "Months ago," the man said clearly into the microphone, "I was in a crisis. Internal. An emotional crisis. In fact, a year ago, I lost someone very close. I saw people interested in me only for money. No one really saw me. So I wanted to test whether anyone saw me or was only on the side of money. So I lived, on the street, as no one, as a person who would appear worthless." The hall remained silent. A West, a person, listening ear, listening with interest. "I went to Westbridge Hospital. I was very sick, and there I found a nurse. Her name was Sandra Mitchell. She saw me homeless, penniless, but there was no judgment in her gaze, only compassion, only a human, only care, only kindness. She gave me something without extra words, something that couldn't be—" Sandra couldn't hold back her tears. The women standing beside her noticed, but no one said anything. Everyone in the entire room waited for this man's final words. Janet, however, was frozen. Her face was white. Her hands were trembling. "No," she whispered. "Is that him?" "That homeless man." This nurse restored my faith. That real compassion exists. That real kindness exists. And before I left, I could never forget what she said. Then I learned of her struggle. Her mother is sick. She works on her own effort, without money, close to hopeless. And she wasn't someone who was anywhere near, because without it ever becoming an issue for her, she showed compassion. The man paused for a moment, bowed his head, looked at the wall, then turned back. "In great charity, it was because of people like you that it worked. All these hospitals, all these treatments, because of compassion, because of humanity, not money, because without compassion, no money was anything. And I needed to learn this. And this nurse taught me this." Explosive applause, cameras, joy in their eyes like autumn leaves falling. Ryan's face was so shocked it turned red. Janet's knees trembled. She held onto a chair. "No, no, no," she murmured. "This can't be. This isn't right. That man I quote. She remembered what she did, remembered that night, belittling Sandra, ignoring that patient. And now that patient was a billionaire. And Sandra was his hero. But the man left the stage. He advanced through the crowd, helping, heading straight toward Sandra inside. No one knew what would happen. "Hello, Sandra," he said quietly. There was a silence that could be felt throughout the room. "My name is Matthew Harrison, and I'm that man. I'm not David Foster. My real name is Matthew, and here I am before you." Sandra couldn't believe it. Her whole body trembled. Had everything been wrong? Was it a dream? But the eyes were the same. That voice, that thing, just like David. Janet looked from behind. Tears flowed down her cheeks. But this time no one was looking at her. No one. Everyone was looking at Sandra. Always Sandra. Always, always, always Sandra. The anger inside her gave way to pain. Deep, bitter pain. What have I done?" she whispered. I lost everything." They went to a quiet corner of the balcony, in the cold air. City lights sparkled below. Far away, another world. "Why?" Sandra asked. The words came out with difficulty. "Why all this game? Why did you deceive me like this?" Matthew paused for a moment and looked. At the city lights. There was something chest-pulling inside him. "Because I was very sick," he said. There was real pain in his voice. "A year ago, I lost a family member. They were very close to me. They were sick. And then I always wondered, with all this money, with all this power, why didn't anyone really care? Why were they all just manipulation and benefit? Were all people there just for money? I tested living, on the street, to see reality. Could someone look for nothing, just for compassion?" Matthew paused, looked at the sky. A cloud was passing. "And you were there. Without leaving your light, without leaving what you said, just, you were there. You showed me compassion, regardless of money. You called me human. That moment completely changed my life, because even though I had disappeared, I could never forget you. I followed your work all year. I saw your struggle, what you did for your mother. How many times you stood despite everything, and I knew. I knew that I love you, Sandra. Really. Deeply. Sandra couldn't speak. Her heart was beating wildly. I know this is very fast, Matthew said. I know we only lived one night. I know we don't really know each other, but compassion knows, because a compassionate heart recognizes a compassionate heart, and I want you. I want to live with you, with your mother, my whole life. Will you share your life with me? Will you marry me? Matthew took it from his pocket, a small velvet box, opened it, diamond ring, sparkling, like crystal. Sandra couldn't say anything. Her heart was beating wildly. Life doesn't work like this, but... Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Inside, Janet sat in the corner, alone, under the weight of her own choices. No one was looking at her. No one was questioning her. Just... She wasn't there. She was invisible. Just like she thought Sandra always felt. But now Janet understood. Sandra had never been invisible. Sandra had always been seen, because Sandra was light, and Janet was just shadow. Days, months, and years passed. A scandal had been made, but no one cared, because Sandra's life had changed. Her mother's life had changed. Even when the hospital people worked, the event was found around. Some nurses accused Sandra of loving money. Gold digger, they whispered. But most people's hearts softened at Matthew's speech and donation. Ryan never spoke to Sandra. Humiliation had silenced him. As for Janet disappeared, left the hospital, quietly. One day she was there, the next day she wasn't. No one asked, no one wondered, because Janet wasn't well-intentioned and never had been. She had never been light, and life forgot those who remained in darkness. But the story continued for Sandra. As time passed with Matthew, Sandra got to know him better, learned about his childhood stories, learned about his family's charities, that wealth could be both a blessing and a barrier. She learned that the cause of Matthew's sister's death was also cancer. Seeing Sandra's mother, even talking to her, was healing for Matthew. One evening, Sandra and Matthew sat in a park. Rose garden, flowers in full bloom. The sun was setting. "Do you remember," Matthew said, "do you remember that night I proposed to you?" "You said yes." Sandra laughed. "How could I forget? It was so fast, it was so scary, it was so wonderful." "Was there hope inside you?" Matthew said. "No," Sandra said truthfully, thoughtfully. "There was fear. There was doubt. But still there was faith. Somehow I knew you. Not from the man, but from the human." Matthew held her hand. For a long moment they didn't speak. "You know," Matthew finally said, "this story isn't really about inheritance and money. It's all about compassion. It's all about the power of being human. Even when no one cares about me, if someone is with you, that changes everything. Money can't change it. Power can't change it. But compassion changes everything." Sandra laid her head on his shoulder. Below, city lights sparkled. The respected billionaire and the poor nurse. Or just two people, with compassion and hope inside. On an autumn evening they got married in a small but cheerful ceremony. A small arbor, decorated with flowers. Linda took her daughter's arm. She could walk with a weak cane now. She smiled, tear marks on her cheek. They made vows, in silent blessing. Then Matthew founded a charity. Free treatment for homeless patients. Sandra worked there, spreading compassion. The patients they cared for changed. They changed. 1 year, 2 years. Time passed, but compassion didn't end. If you've listened to me this far, you'll understand that this story isn't actually about inheritance and wealth. This story shows that power alone isn't enough. It proves that life isn't just about titles, fame, and glory. And the other important lesson to be drawn is jealousy. How can a person get lost in their own darkness? How can a person you thought was a friend betray someone close to them? These are poisonous emotions, and such people have the potential to eventually choke on their own poison. This poison eats them from the inside, day by day, until nothing remains. Because real inheritance isn't money. It's a person's heart, their patience, their kindness, the mark you leave on other people's lives. That's the real inheritance. And jealousy? Jealousy only burns its own inheritance, only extinguishes its own light. Maybe instead of envying others' light, it's necessary to light your own light. If you've stayed with me this far, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and support us. Like the video and share your feelings with us in the comments. I'm really curious. Maybe you've met a Janet too, or encountered someone like Sandra. Thank you for watching us. Don't forget to support. Every subscription, like, and comment encourages us for our next story.